Welcome back to MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things magic. We return with the Kitchen Table series, our longest running content series here at the channel. And today we are going to look at deck tech number 62, Mono Red Apex Titan. What's up, MTG BC, baby? That is the MTG Burgeoning community. Here we are with our longest running content series, the Kitchen Table series. We are up to deck tech number 62, and we're going mono red today, Apex Titan. What the heck does that mean? Well, let's get on with the deck tech and find out. Since we are playing mono red, we have nothing to include but basic mountains. As we generally do during the Kitchen Table series, we begin with the mana base, and there's not much thrills, chills, spills, or frills here. It's all basic mountains all the time to the amount of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 basic mountains. That is our land base, but by no means is it our mana base. We're going to jam this deck with so much mana that it's just going to make your head spin the first few moments of this deck. We're at the kitchen table, so of course we've got to play with one copy of Soul Ring. That's going in. That's mana producer number 21. 22 through 25 is a full playset of Thalwar Stone. This is our exotic orchard on an artifact. It's a CMC of 2. It taps to add 1 mana of any color of a land that an opponent controls could produce. If your meta game is heavy into red like mine, then this is going to act as one of those red diamonds. I'm not sure exactly what it's called. Ruby diamond, maybe? I'm not sure. But either way, hopefully this is going to tap for 1 red mana because we're going to need it. 4 copies of Thalwar Stone. There's 25 mana producers. Next up, we have 26 through 29. It's going to be a full play set of Thran Dynamo. This artifact has a mana value of 4, but we turn it sideways to get back 3 generic mana. 4 copies of Thran Dynamo. And lastly, a full play set, which brings our total up to 33 mana producing cards in a 60 card deck. That playset is going to be Gilded Lotus. It's a mana value of 5 for an artifact, but it's going to come down and give us 3 mana. I dare you to guess which color we'll choose. 3 red mana when we turn it sideways. 4 copies of Gilded Lotus. So 20 basic lands, 1 Soul Ring, 4 Thalwar Stones, and 4 Gilded Lotus for a total of 33 mana producing cards. So you better believe that we're going to bring some big mana spells, but we're just not done producing the mana yet. Next up, let's move away from our lands, let's move away from our artifacts, and let's talk about some sorceries as we talk about one full playset of Geosurge. Why is this card not played with more? I have no idea. It's 4 red mana. That may be a detriment in and of itself. However, in a mono red deck, the returns are phenomenal. We pay 4 red, we get 7 red, with the caveat of we can only use this mana to cast artifact or creature spells. It's a good thing we have a lot of artifacts in this deck, and it's a good thing we have some of the best creatures we can jam into the 60 card deck. More on those to come. 4 copies of Geosurge. We're still not done with the mana. We're going to play with a full play set of Apex of Power. At sorcery speed for 7 and 3 red, we exile the top 7 cards of our library, and until end of turn, we may cast non-land cards exiled this way. If this spell was cast from our hand, which it will be, we add 10 mana of any one color. So, it is important to point out, Geosurge will not help us cast Apex of Power. Geosurge is one of the cards we want to cast with Apex of Power. That's why there were so many mana rocks included, a whole 13 of them, in order to ramp out as quickly as possible to cast Apex of Power. Because once we cast this spell from our hand, what this really does says exile the top 7 cards of your library. You may play them this turn. And we get back the free mana, we get back 10 mana that we cast, and all of it's going to be red. 4 copies of Apex of Power to go with 4 copies of Geosurge, pushing our total mana investment in this 60-card deck to 41 cards. Wowzer, yowzer. What do we have left? Well, the good news is we are finished with the mana. Now let's talk about how are we going to win this game. Well, let's first roll out some of the ways in which we're going to protect those win conditions, because we want to hit that Apex of Power. We want to hit those Geosurges. The Geosurges let us cast artifacts and creatures with that 7 mana for the investment of 4. So let's first talk about 4 copies of Swiftfoot Boots. It's going to give equipped creature hexproof and haste with an equip cost of 1. So we can make sure that this is one of the 7 cards that we're going to exile with Apex of Power so that we can equip it onto one of the following creatures. We'll get to those creatures soon enough. And just in case we needed one more of those artifacts to give us haste, we're going to throw in a Lightning Greaves. The equipped creature has haste and shroud. The equip is 0 on this card. So if we don't have the 1 mana to cast, or if we don't have the 1 mana available to equip Swiftfoot Boots, then we can just equip Lightning Greaves. And last couple of artifacts to talk about, we have Strionic Resonator ×2. There's 2 copies in this deck. We're going to pay 2 mana. We're going to copy target triggered ability that we control, and we may choose new targets for the copy. Those triggered abilities are going to be exceedingly powerful. More on them to come. And the last non-creature spell in this deck is 1 copy of Mizzix's Mastery. 3 in a red. We exile target card that's an instant or sorcery from our graveyard. And for each card exiled this way, we copy it, and then we may cast the copy without paying its mana cost. We then exile Mizzix's Mastery. However, for the overload cost of 5 and triple red, we're going to do that with each instant or sorcery card in our graveyard. And as you can see, if we have an Apex of Power, you'll understand that it doesn't say exile Apex of Power. We cast it, it goes to the graveyard. And guess what? If one of the spells that comes up is Mizzix's Mastery, we're going to use the 10 mana. We're either going to cast it to recast the 1 Apex of Power, or we're going to overload it to cast multiple copies of instants or sorceries. In this instance, they're just going to be sorceries that are in our graveyard. We can look at Mizzix's Mastery as a potential win condition in this deck. Speaking of win condition in this deck, let's start getting to them, because it's important that the MTG BC understand why we're going crazy with the mana in order to power out Apex of Power as quickly as possible. Let's begin by including 3 copies of Etali Primal Storm. 4 and 2 red, it's a 6/6 legendary Elder Dinosaur, and when it attacks, Notice it does not need to deal combat damage. When it attacks, we exile the top card of each player's library, and we may cast any number of non-land cards exiled this way without paying their mana costs. This, in conjunction with a Swiftfoot Boots and or a Lightning Greaves, this is one of the combinations we want to pull off when we hit our apex of power. And if we can also Strionic Resonate that triggered ability and do it twice, well, that's just double aces in our hand. 3 copies of Etali Primal Titan. Next up, we have 1 copy of Kozilek, Butcher of Truth. Costs 10 on the dot, which, that's pretty funny. That's the exact amount of mana we get back from casting Apex Predator. I'm sorry, from casting Apex of Power. And of course, if we cast Kozilek, Butcher of Truth, we're going to draw 4 cards. It's a 12/12 with Annihilator of 4. Slap on a Haste Enabler, and Kozilek could instantly take out an opponent's entire board state by forcing them to sacrifice 4 permanents by the time that we get to potentially turn 3, 4, or 5. Kozilek, Butcher of Truth is another of the win conditions in this deck. Ulamog, the Infinite Gyre, another of our Eldrazi Titans. That is the other part of the title of this deck. Apex Titan, Apex for Apex of Power, Titan for the Eldrazi Titans. This is an 11 CMC, and when we cast Ulamog, we destroy target permanents. What we get is a 10/10 indestructible with Annihilator 4. Again, we turn this sideways with Haste, one of our Haste abilities, and we end up taking out, most likely, one of our entire opponent's board states. Well, if we've got the first 2 Titans, you knew it was only a matter of time until we got to the queen of them. Emrakul, the Eon's Torn. We all know about Emrakul. She's a 15/15, 4/15 mana. She cannot be countered. She cannot be countered. She can be counted on winning the game. Whenever we cast Emrakul, we get to take an extra turn. She flies. She has protection from colored spells, and she has an Annihilator of 6. If she hits the board, it's most likely GG. And you'll also note that each of these 3 Eldrazi Titans have both a cast trigger and an attack trigger, which is the Annihilator, something that we can pay 2 mana and tap one of our Strionic Resonators to copy. So we can copy Kozilek to draw 8 cards. We could copy Ulamog to destroy 2 target permanents. If we have the mana available, we can pay 2 and take 2 extra turns with Emrakul. Can you imagine having Annihilator 8 with Kozilek or Ulamog by copying the attack trigger with Strionic Resonator? How about Annihilator 12 with Emrakul? Game over. And lastly, card number 60. This card took the place of one of the Etalis in the deck, just in case we ended up getting one of the Titans in our hand and getting them into play a little more quickly. We have Ilharg the Raze-Boar, 6/6 trample for 3 and 2 red mana. Whenever Ilharg attacks, we may put a creature card from our hand onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. We return that creature to our hand at the beginning of the next end step. And if Ilharg were to die, we put it into exile from the battlefield, and then we put it into its owner's library, 3rd from the top. Now, by getting our creatures into play using Ilharg's ability, we will not be able to do any of the card exiling with Etali, or we will not get any of the cast or attack triggers from any of our Eldrazi Titans. Ilharg is included in this deck as a hedge for the potential of being flooded with creatures in our hand, which has happened a couple of times in the history of this deck. Still, getting an Emrakul into play, 15/15 flying trample on the first few turns, through the use of Ilharg, that could be very, very game-ending for one of our opponents. There you have it, MTG BC. This is Kitchen Table Deck number 62. This was Mono Red Apex Titan. Can't wait to see what you say about this beauty in the comment section below. This is MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things magic.